So, solipsism is kinda weird. To kick this video off, let's talk about solipsism. It's popular in the sense that it's more well known than about 99% of other philosophies, but it hasn't quite reached the level of mainstream recognition as philosophies like Stoicism, existentialism, or nihilism. So solipsism gets stuck in this awkward middle ground where a lot of people know of it, but very few actually understand it. And that's where things get messy. This gap between what solipsism is and how people perceive it has led to some wild misconceptions, causing solipsism to earn the reputation as a forbidden or cursed philosophy, something so dangerous and mind-bending that it could drive you to madness. If you've heard anything about solipsism lately, chances are it's in the context of something creepy or deeply disturbing. Maybe you've heard people claim that it's evil, or that it exposes the truth of reality, or how it's caused brilliant professors and philosophers to lose their minds and end their own lives. However, that's not quite true, at least not in the way that people make it sound. Solipsism itself isn't inherently dangerous or evil, but it does present some seriously thought-provoking ideas, concepts so abstract and reality-bending that they can feel unsettling. Now, if you pair that with drug use or mental health challenges, especially conditions like schizophrenia, it can lead to very harmful outcomes, and when tragedies like that happen, solipsism gets unfairly blamed. This gives solipsism a very weird and ominous vibe. People treat it like some kind of mental Pandora's box. Open it and you risk falling into despair or losing your grip on reality. But here's the thing, while these fears are incredibly exaggerated, they're not entirely baseless either. Solipsism is one of those rare philosophies that, like Stoicism, can have a real tangible effect on how you experience life and even feel in your own body. It's kind of like what my dad used to tell me, don't think too hard or you'll hurt yourself. But solipsism kind of feels like that, like a philosophy that might give you a headache if you go too deep. But enough with the scary stories. What is solipsism actually? At its core, solipsism is a philosophical idea about the nature of reality itself. It's built on one central claim, cogito ergo sum, or the only thing you can truly be certain of is your own mind, in more simple terms. Think about it. Everything you experience, from the taste of your morning coffee to the sound of this video, exists only because your mind is perceiving it. Because of that, you can't prove with absolute certainty that anything exists outside of your own consciousness. For all you know, the entire world could just be an elaborate dream, a simulation, or a figment of your own imagination. Here's an example. Imagine you're playing a realistic VR game. Technology has dramatically improved, and while you're in the game, everything feels real. Trees, buildings, people, all of it. But deep down, you know it's not. Solipsism pushes this idea further, suggesting that everything in life is like that VR world. That means that everything you see, everything you hear, feel, taste, could all be fake, leaving you with only one thing that you can guarantee exists, yourself. But that brings up a really important question. Does that mean that solipsism says that other people don't exist? This is one of the major problems with solipsism, since it causes many people who believe in it to feel an impending and absolute sense of loneliness. However, solipsism never claims this outright, and believing that other people in the world don't actually exist would require a foundation and connection of logic that directly contradicts what solipsism is. Solipsism isn't saying the external world or other minds don't exist. It just says that you can't know for sure. It's like being in a room with the lights off. You can't see what's in the room, but that doesn't mean it's empty. Solipsism is less about denying reality and more about questioning it. So where did the idea of solipsism come from? Well, the roots of solipsism can be traced back to ancient philosophy, but it really gained traction in the 17th century with thinkers like René Descartes. Descartes famously said, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. This phrase is often linked to solipsism because it reflects the idea that the act of thinking is the only undeniable proof of existence. Because if you're thinking, there must be a you doing the thinking. But here's the twist. Descartes didn't stop there. He used this foundation to argue for the existence of God and the material world. Solipsism, however, stops at I think, therefore I am, and doesn't try to prove anything beyond that. And that's where things start to get existentially spicy. Solipsism forces you to confront the idea that everything you take for granted, your friends, family, your favorite Netflix show, all might not exist outside your own mind. And if that's true, what's the point of it all? What's even real? This is where solipsism gets its reputation as the forbidden philosophy. It can feel like an intellectual rabbit hole with no way out, especially if you're prone to overthinking. But here's the thing, solipsism isn't a philosophy that's meant for people to live by, because living by solipsism would contradict its own foundation. Instead, it's more of a thought experiment, a way to challenge your assumptions about reality and explore the limits of human knowledge. That being said, what are the implications of solipsism? Okay, so if solipsism says that the only thing you can truly know is your own mind, what does that actually mean for your life? On the surface, it might sound isolating, even depressing, like the philosophical equivalent of being the last person alive in the universe. But I think it's important that we break this down a little bit first. One of the most significant implications of solipsism is that it challenges how we define reality. If everything you experience is filtered through your mind, then your perception becomes entirely shaped by how your mind interprets it. And here's why that's actually kind of empowering. If everything you know is based on perception, then you have a surprising amount of control over how you engage with the world. Solipsism can remind us that our thoughts, beliefs, and interpretations all hold power. If your reality is shaped by your mind, then shifting your perspective can fundamentally change how you experience life. For example, let's say you're having a bad day. Everything feels wrong and it seems like the world is out to get you. Solipsism, in a weird way, can help you take a step back and ask, is it really the world that's bad? Or is it how I'm interpreting things? And this isn't to say that solipsism is about blaming yourself for everything, but it can encourage you to have a kind of mental flexibility and strength. People tend to think about solipsism like it's some dark and forbidden secret that will drive you insane if you think too much about it. But honestly, that reputation is way overblown. Solipsism is just a tool, a framework for questioning reality. And like any tool, it's not inherently good or evil. It's all about how you approach it. If you let solipsism spiral into existential dread, focusing on how lonely or meaningless everything might feel, then yeah, it can be overwhelming. But if you treat it as a thought experiment, it can actually be fascinating and even freeing. For example, solipsism doesn't prove that nothing else exists. It just acknowledges that we can't know for sure. Instead of seeing that uncertainty as a bad thing, you could view it as an opportunity to focus on what you find meaningful. It can also help you appreciate the present moment. If everything only exists in your perception, then every minuscule thing that you experience right now becomes incredibly significant. The whole idea that solipsism is evil often comes from a misunderstanding. People conflate solipsism with selfishness or nihilism, assuming that if only your mind matters, then you can treat people however you want. But here's the thing, solipsism doesn't say other people don't matter. It just questions how we know they exist. If anything, solipsism can make you more empathetic. If all of reality is shaped by your mind, then the same could be true for others. And that realization can inspire compassion. Everyone you meet could be navigating their own reality based off their perceptions and experiences. Also, solipsism doesn't demand that you stop caring about the world around you. Even if you can't be certain that anything exists outside of your own mind, you still experience life as if it does. You still feel joy, love, connection, and purpose. And solipsism can't erase those things. It just makes you more aware of their source. With all that being said, is solipsism dangerous? And the answer to that question is not inherently. Sure, if you're already struggling with mental health challenges or have a fragile sense of reality, diving too deeply into solipsism might not be the best idea. But that's true for any intense philosophical concept. It's not unique to solipsism. The real danger isn't solipsism itself, but how people approach it. If you treat it as a fun, mind-expanding exercise, it can open up new ways of thinking about the world. But if you take it too literally, or let it feed into existing anxieties, it can feel overwhelming. Solipsism is weird, for sure. It's provocative and maybe a little unsettling at first, but it's not evil, and it's definitely not something to fear. Instead, it's an invitation to think critically about what we know, how we know it, and what it means to exist. Solipsism is kind of like the perfect neutrality. Rather than saying that reality is a lie or that it is the objective truth, solipsism challenges you to make that distinction for yourself. It asks you to take a step into the gray of what reality really is, not obliging to one definition or way of thinking. Solipsism forces you to question everything. And honestly, that's what philosophy is all about.